Hello and welcome once again to this Red Gaming Tech Div video. Myself and Marta, where as always I'm here with the latest news from the tech world in the last 24 or so hours. Hope you're all having a lovely Saturday. We're going to start things off with a couple of pieces from Intel. First of all, regarding their cellular modem business. Now, you may recall that earlier on this year, Intel exited the sort of 5G phone modem area, and we heard that they had signed an agreement with Apple to hand over its 5G modem division for $1 billion. This was again in July of this year, so quite some time ago now as we approach the beginning of December. But now it seems Intel feels that it got a little bit shortchanged in this deal, as they are now describing it as a quote multi-billion-dollar loss. And basically are alleging that Qualcomm essentially created the conditions that forced it out of the market. And there's even a new blog post about this particular topic, which is what I'm going to move on to after this, because it's kind of a whole different thing. So while the cause of this is the next topic, the result is that they have sold the 5G modem section and just feels like they should have got much more of it, but they were kind of in a tight spot and Apple probably knew that. But what about Intel, Qualcomm and this blog post, I hear you ask? Well, first of all, it was written and posted by Intel EVP and General Counsel Stephen R. Rogers, and you can read his full blog post in the description below this video. I suggest you do give it a read, as I'm not going to read all of it here. It is very interesting, but he says that, quote, Intel suffered the brunt of Qualcomm's anti-competitive behavior, was denied opportunities in the modem market, was prevented from making sales to customers, and was forced to sell at prices artificially skewed by Qualcomm. And they basically are counting themselves among the list of, quote, competitors Qualcomm forced out of the modem chip market. Now, for those of you wondering why he's actually writing about this, today Intel filed a brief supporting the FTC and opposing Qualcomm's appeal of the judgment which was rendered against them in May of this year. And this is why he's talking specifically about the case in the last segment that I'm about to read out. And they say, quote, the world benefits from fair competition in the wireless technology market, given the importance of wireless technology to the future of connected computing, including the revolutionary promise of 5G. We strongly support the efforts of the FTC and other law enforcement agencies to require Qualcomm to obey the laws and compete on a level playing field. We hope our amicus belief will help in clarifying the full extent of the harm that Qualcomm's unlawful behavior has caused and will continue to cause if left unchecked. So, I think it's fair to say that Stephen is not mincing any words there against the company, and if obviously they feel that it is Qualcomm's doing that they've been forced to sell their 5G business, you can't really blame them for being passionate on the topic. It is definitely going to be interesting to see if the decision does indeed stand. There's some very strong words from Intel, and it's not just them that have been affected, of course. You may recall that there was a lawsuit from Apple against the company as well for similar reasons, and Apple and Intel even joined forces for a while against them. Obviously, Apple decided to drop things eventually, at least as far as I'm aware. That was the last update I actually heard regarding this on Apple's side of things. But yeah, it's not just those two companies if these accusations are indeed accurate, and of course if the appeal stands, the court will at least made its decision in that regard. But let's move on, shall we, to something next, a bit of an update regarding Intel and Samsung. So we've actually discussed this topic a couple of times. I myself discussed quite some time ago now some rumours that were doing the rounds, basically saying that Intel were looking to third-party foundries to try and alleviate some of the supply issues that they've been suffering with 14nm for quite some time now. You may recall that recently Dell have spoken about this, and other companies have commented as well, and we're basically seeing reports that the 14nm shortage is going to continue, as of course the transition to 10nm is going to be slow, and there are still an absolute ton of 14nm products out there being bought not only by us as consumers, but obviously OEMs and that sort of thing as well. So again, there was those reports floating around, and Paul discussed himself recently that there were now new reports basically saying that Samsung had been tapped to help Intel with its supply issues on 14nm, and that we're going to be making use of their foundries. For the reasons why Paul didn't think this was all that likely to begin with, do watch his video. It goes quite in depth as to why this wouldn't make a lot of sense. And now Intel has actually commented on the issue. And they've said, quote, "The letter from last week says we will increase our use of Foundries so we can build more CPUs at Intel. The news reports about our use of third-party Foundries for CPUs are inaccurate." So basically they're saying that not only are they not using Samsung, they're denying about using third-party Foundries, period, despite their issues. Now this may just be to incompatibility issues. Obviously it's different production process and all that sort of thing. You can't just swap one thing out for another and expect it to be the same. It would be different builds. That's basically what Paul said, but he went into a lot more detail. I'm giving you the massive TLDR, so again, go check out his video if you're curious. So just a bit of update on that particular topic. Intel has denied that this is the case. So we're going to move on to a quick little thing from AMD regarding the Ryzen 3250U. So what we have here is a Geekbench listing which has been tweeted by Tom Apisak, again a name you should be very familiar with. He has tweeted numerous things and yeah, he doesn't really need much introduction. So he has tweeted this listing for the Ryzen 3 3250U and I'm just going to go through the results here. So as we can see on the actual specs before we get on to the results, we see a base frequency of 2.6 gigahertz and a max of 3.47, and this is of course 2 cores and 4 threads. But what about the scores, I hear you ask? Well, we see a single core score of 38 and 70 and a multi-core score of 8115. And just to refresh your memory, this is a bit of a refresh, still on the 14nm Raven Ridge, but still nice to see the specs here and of course the scores as well. So let's move on to our final topic of today, which is regarding the Xbox Scarlett. Now unfortunately no specs news or anything like that, it's just some comments regarding Microsoft's plans for the game releases. I have spoken a lot about how Microsoft are not being shy about their aggressive plans for next generation. You know, as I've said numerous times at this point, the Xbox One is a good console. It just had a lot of issues at launch, obviously, as I've said numerous times, and there was just a lack of games, I feel, for a lot of people. There was just not a lot of reason to actually purchase the console if you weren't interested in games like Halo or Gears of War. And Microsoft, again, have been buying studios left, right and centre to help alleviate this, as well as, of course, working on their own projects, which we'll undoubtedly see at E3 next year. So we actually have some interesting comments from the Xbox Game Studios' Matt Booty, who spoke to Games Radar, and basically said that, well, they've got some fairly aggressive plans for game releases. He confirmed that they would like to, quote, deliver a game roughly every 3 to 4 months. However, they did admit that the team has a, quote, a little bit of work to do to get there, and things may be, quote unquote, lumpy, but the team is, quote, closer than we were. So basically, he's admitting they're not quite there yet. They want to get to the point where they can kind of get this, you know, fairly consistent release of games, because when it's a really nice year for gaming, it just feels like every few months there's something, you know, coming out and everything's just packed and you're just like, oh, my poor wallet is crying in the corner. And that's obviously the kind of feel that they want to get. There's something always interesting, always keeping you in that Xbox loop, as it were. So once you have a Scarlett, you don't get bored of it after a year and then sell it, because obviously they want you in purchasing games, playing games, sharing the content, all that sort of stuff. You know, they want to have an active user base for obvious reasons that I don't feel like I need to go into. And having a steady release of good games is obviously one step to achieving that. Obviously, the quality of the games matters, but obviously that's going to be a very personal thing. Whether or not you're interested in every game is not going to be the case. But I just feel like as long as there's games coming out, someone can pick up their phone, like, oh, what's the schedule for this year? Oh, okay, we got a game in the summer, and then we got a game in the autumn, and then we got this, that, and the other. You know, a million things coming out before Christmas as per bloody usual. So they just want to keep people interested in the ecosystem. That is really what Microsoft have been trying to do, and also by increasing the ecosystem with things like cross-platform play and obviously the Game Pass being such a great deal as well. They are not being shy and they are not backing down. So I really feel that the race is definitely on between Sony and Microsoft for the next generation consoles, but of course time will tell. All of this is easy to say in interviews, but obviously a lot harder to pull off in reality. But I would hope that Microsoft have learned some valuable lessons from the Xbox One, and Sony, I'm sure, have learned a lot themselves from what happened with the PS4. Obviously, it was a great success, but that does not mean to say, that they could have done things better, or there aren't still lessons to learn from both themselves and the market itself. So, that has me done for this video. Thank you so much for watching. As always, your support is highly appreciated, and I'll see you next time.